Alpha Day, it's your innovation coach, Rob Jackson, and welcome to another edition of the Innovate Guam podcast where we look at all things innovation, technology, and improvement related to the island of Guam. Like, subscribe, and follow me on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and IG, and now on Substack. My podcast drops beginning of each week. Also, look for my Innovate column in the Pacific Daily News on the first and third Fridays of each month. So, my guest for today's podcast, he is the Vice President of Construction at Smithbridge, a prominent construction firm specializing in civil, mechanical, and maritime projects all over Guam, as well as New Zealand and Australia and other areas of the globe. With over 2 decades of experience on the island, my guest has been instrumental in shaping Guam's construction landscape and workforce development initiatives. He is a founding trustee of the GCA Trades Academy, where he has been a zealous champion of continuous training for the construction industry. He advocates on investing in employees' development, believing that it benefits both the company as well as the employees, as well as the overall broader industry. Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you today Mr. Graeme Ridley. Graeme, how are you doing?
Good, thanks, Robert. Very good. Thanks very much for the invite. Appreciate it.
Well, welcome to the Innovate Guam podcast. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be with us today. Are you ready to get into it?
Yes, yep, let's go.
All right. So we have a tradition here. We start off with some icebreaker questions, kind of get a feel about where your head is at in terms of innovation. So my first question to you is, what's your definition of innovation, and what does innovation mean to you?
For me, I think it means being a leader in the technology field, and being in the construction game, the engineering game. You have to be at the front, otherwise you're down in the pack with the rest of them. So you've got to keep up with the trends. You've got to keep up with the technology. At my age, it's pretty difficult to understand it, and that's why we need the young ones coming along, because they can do in a fraction of the time with new technology, which is beyond me being able to do it. And we've just got to be continually bringing new blood into the industry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what is your favorite innovation or piece of technology?
Um, as I said, I'm knocking on the door of 70 now, and I think when we first brought computers into the industry, I had a Mac notebook, and I used to fly between New Zealand and Australia, and I carry a little printer in a bag, and it was the bee's knees in those days. I could work an Excel spreadsheet on it on the plane, that kind of thing. And in those days, there were people saying, does your CEO have a laptop? And there were a lot of companies, the answer was no. They don't even know what a laptop is. So it's certainly changed the way we do things, the way everything gets done. The digital age, digital technology, digital controls, from the old pneumatic controls, electro-pneumatic, hydraulic. It's it's changed everything.
Absolutely. So, what is your most surprising piece of technology or innovation? Specifically, maybe something that when it first came out, you thought it was kind of silly or weird, but then after some time, it grew on you, and now it's something that you can't live without.
Yeah, that's an unusual one, because everything's Everything is so different. So different today. Let me think about that one. I'll get back to you further
Okay.
in the discussion.
All right, let's jump in and talk about workforce development. Smithbridge really has a remarkable commitment to this workforce training and development. You guys got 46 employees currently enrolled at the GCA Trades Academy. Why is this so much a core part of Smithbridge's company culture?
It's it's part of the it's part of the New Zealand and the Australian culture is to train apprentices. Everybody does it. It's not something that's unusual. And of course, Smithbridge originated in the South Island of New Zealand, and then moved to the North Island. And a lot of your listeners won't understand those geographics, but in moving to the North Island was as big a move as moving from New Zealand to Australia 10 years
Wow.
later. And that. So to liken it, it's like going from Guam to Hawaii. There's just a big gap. But generally in New Zealand, training has been part of the blue collar workers' way of life, and the employers, the industry controlled the applicants coming in, and the industry has the best understanding of how many applicants are required, so they train up what they need. To give you an example, 30 odd years ago, the New Zealand Refining Company announced that they were going to expand the refinery at Marsden Point in the North Island of New Zealand, and they engaged Badger Chiyoda out of Japan for the technology. And they worked out, there's 500,000 man hours of welding to be done in the job, and that turned out to be more than 2 times the number of welders that were employed in the whole of New Zealand. So the industry training organisation, which handles the training of your apprenticeship people, went to the polytechs and said, what can we do? We need stick welders, TIG welders, chrome moly welders, and stainless steel welders. 500, 600 people for the next 3 years at Marsden Point. And so we developed a course that trained for the specifics of the welds in that job.
So
And
let me interrupt you for just a second, Graeme. When you said we, is that we being Smithbridge or we being somebody else larger or outside of Smithbridge?
that was the apprenticeship training commission, which is made up of government entity, union entity, employer entity, and they controlled the training that comes into their industry. Then they put those trainees out to their industry companies, and then they go on the job, they're earning money, and they start their careers. Now, the significance of this is that a 4-year welding apprenticeship is a norm. Well, we didn't have 4 years. So by narrowing it down to the welding specific that was required, and then just training that welding, then advertising for applicants, we condensed it down to a 6-week welding course. And at the end of that 6 weeks, applicants were coming out certified to be able to perform the specific welds. Now, in the start, if the pipe was only 2 feet off the ground, they would dig a hole so that the welder could stand in the most comfortable position and make the weld. At the end of the job, the welder was lying on his belly, crawling under the pipe, making the weld, and that. So the on-job training the skill just increased exponentially. And of course, at the end of it, we had all these additional welders. And what happened to them? They all went out all around the world. They said, we've just come off Badger Chioda's job. A lot of them went to their next big project in the Middle East and that. And then some of them never come back. But a lot of them do come back. And that's the whole crux to training. You have to understand that your investment in the person may not benefit your company specifically beyond the job that you've got them working in at the time, but you're benefiting the industry and then the ones that come back, like Enacted Guam. Maybe 2,000-3,000 apprentices or something like that, out of your H2 workers bulk. And at the end of this build-up, they might go away, but some of them will want to come home to their roots and live, just like the people in New Zealand wanted to come home, and then they bring home that worldly experience as well, and replenish the stock at home. You've got to have that mentality as an employer.
Absolutely. And it sounds very much kind of like it's maybe a New Zealand and Australian cultural kind of thing, because it seems like in the United States, we've moved to a place where when an employee comes to the company, there's an expectation that they're a full up round, and they really don't do the kind of proactive investment in training that you see. Would you agree with that? What you've seen between the different cultures in the country?
I think that is because the United States is so big. New Zealand and then Australia, 20 million people, 5 million in New Zealand. It's a pretty close-knit community in the construction and engineering industry. I've had people come in and say, "Oh, I'm a boilermaker and I'd like a job." And oh, okay. Have you got your apprenticeship papers with you? Oh no, I haven't got them with me. No. Oh, okay. Where did you serve your apprenticeship? Oh, I served my apprenticeship at A&G Price in Wellington, New Zealand. Oh, okay. Yeah. So when did you finish your apprenticeship? Oh, 6 years ago. Okay. Who was the manager there when you did your apprenticeship? Oh, I don't know. Well, Rolf Bumelberg's been the manager there for 30 years and he's a personal friend of mine. So if I ring him up and ask for Robert Jackson's reference, is he going to say you're a really good guy? Or is he going to say I've never heard of you? But anyway, you're here now, so you're ready to start work. Yep. Well, how'd you get here? Oh, in my car. Okay, where's your car? Oh, on the other side of the road over there. Well, hop over there and get your toolbox out of the boot of the car and I'll meet you down in the workshop. Well, I haven't got my toolbox. Well, tradesmen don't go anywhere applying for a job without their toolbox.
That's
their toolbox is their extension of their hands, and their hands are what earns a living to put the food on the table, to put the kids through school and college, whatever. And you can pick the frauds pretty quickly. So when they say I come from such and such engineering in Chicago, I don't know. So I say, so you're a welder? Yes. Okay, well, hop up to our workshop, see the foreman. There's some 6-inch pipe weld test pieces. Weld it 6 inches off the ground onto the leg of the table and weld out that test piece and bring it back down here to this office within an hour. Because if you can't weld a 6-inch pipe in 1 hour, then you're not a welder. And let me have a look at your work. Oh, well, I didn't bring my welding helmet. Okay, all right. Well, come back when you're ready to do a weld test. So we have to do that, and we catch a lot of people out like that.
Yeah,
Very
that's. It sounds like with the smaller populations, it's a lot more of like a community, and you can do that kind of level of validation on individuals that come in, and that's just really outstanding. And I really love that cultural background and perspective of Australia and New Zealand versus the States. You once compared Smithbridge's approach to training apprentices like salmon fishing. Could you kind of expand upon that philosophy? You kind of touched a little bit on it in your
Yeah.
first answer, but can you just kind of take it to the next level?
Yeah, well, with salmon farming, you grow the fingerlings, and you feed them and you nurture them and you train them, so to speak. If you're comparing it to the apprentices, and then to get the real flavour, they have to do a sea run. So the
Hmm.
salmon farms down in the South Island of New Zealand, they grow all these fingerlings and then they release them into the wild, and they head down the river and they do the sea run, and then some come back to their birthplace to spawn, and some never return. They just, maybe they don't survive or whatever, but they just never return. And that's why I say you've got to be just continually training and be continually ready to set them free at their apprenticeship end. In fact, we often promote it. Say, look, go away and get some worldly experience. And if you choose to come back home, give us a chance, come and see us. We'd like to rehire you. But we never place any terms on our training. We never say to people, well, if we train you to do this, you got to stay with us, or anything like that, or you got to pay half, or you got to do this. It's a budgeted thing that we allocate, and that. At the end of the day, if we train somebody from this level to that level and they go and get them a job at that next level at the company down the road, their families benefit, the company down the road benefits, the industry benefits, and the company down the road might come and buy a truckload of quarry products off us, or a crane hire, or some concrete. So we want everybody to flourish in the good times. All the ones that have been here and stuck through the bad times, you want everybody to benefit in the good times.
Yeah, I love that community approach and looking at it from a broader perspective than just your individual company and stuff. What would you say to managers in other companies who are hesitant to invest in training because they're afraid that their folks are going to leave, or they feel like, well, training's not a part of my performance work spec. It's not in my contract. So I'm not getting paid to train these folks. Therefore, I can't, carve out time and resources for them to do the training.
It's very difficult to change that person's mindset, because it's very difficult to quantify the benefit of that training instantly. But
Mhm.
something that perhaps it could relate to training, a heavy equipment operator rather than an apprentice on a long-term training, but a heavy equipment operator. I mean, you just can't expect somebody, okay, they've done their course, they've got their license, but you can't expect that person from that amount of training to pop in a concrete truck and deliver wet concrete to a job site and then operate that concrete truck, and then look after that concrete truck after the concrete's gone, without training them and that's a very basic example of training that it just has to be done. And I'm sure even the employer that doesn't go with the long-term training must be doing that part of it. But that lifts a labourer. Go and get your license, and now he's lifted to the heavy equipment operator. If he's been a labourer in your company and he comes to work every day, which is critical, because one of the things that we like is the attitude. We place a high emphasis on work ethic and attitude, and timekeeping is just a responsibility that if somebody can turn up to work, and we work 53-hour weeks, that's our standard work week. So we work Monday to Thursday, 40 hours, 8 on Friday, and 5 on Saturday. A 53-hour week, that's 40 ordinary and 13 at time and a half. Wow. And we believe, as a standard Smithbridge, that is a better formula than having 60 workers at 40 hours. You have 45 workers at 53 hours, whatever the numbers turn out to be. You're lifting their standard of living quicker, and the guys, the 53-hour week, that is not a strenuous timetable to work constantly.
That's a very innovative way to maximize your human resource output with that. So all of this investment that you've put in employee training and development, how have you seen this affect employee retention and morale at Smithbridge?
Well, when I came here to Smithbridge in 2003, it was straight after Pong Song Hwa. And initially I came up because of the fuel tanks at Mobile that were damaged, and we got the contract. So we set up the mechanical division in 2003. And we brought a few tradesmen up from our company in New Zealand and trained the local guys that the welding techniques do those jobs. They came up as H2 workers for about 6 months while we did those tank jobs. So we transport the skills out of other organizations that we're associated with, and the overall concept is always to transport those skills to local people. So out of 350 employees, and I haven't, checked on the stats, and perhaps I should have, so don't quote me, but we have around about 10 H2 workers out of 350 employees. The rest of our employees are all local people, and we have no trouble recruiting. We pay a good hourly rate. We work that 53-hour week, 13 hours at time and a half as a weekly standard. And then on top of that, we have a 401k scheme, which the company contributes up to 5% on top. We give 10 days holiday, and all the standard holidays. I think there's 10 or 12 holidays, near enough one a month. And then we give 2 weeks vacation and a week's sick leave, paid, all paid. So those are just standard things that are given to everybody in New Zealand and Australia. And because occasionally we recruit out of that those New Zealand ranks to come up here for a tour of duty. And we say, hey, come up to Guam, experience it. And we'll bring them in, usually the H1 rather than the H2. So crane technicians come out of our Australian company, and they'll come up, and then they're training up the local guys here on that new technology. All the cranes are gone digital now, and you know, if something goes wrong, you've got to be able to get in and plug in and interrogate and talk to Grove in Hawaii and then fly that technician in and all of those sorts of things. But
Right.
our Australian organisation, Universal Cranes, has 350 cranes between New Zealand and Australia, ranging from 20-ton flanners, which are the taxi crane, to 900-ton crawlers. So we bring that expertise in and transfer that knowledge in. And the young ones come in good at that. So a long way around your question, but we don't get big numbers of H2 workers. We concentrate on locals. We concentrate on upskilling any jobs within the company that are vacated. Internal applicants get first opportunity to rise to that occasion, and that.
Yeah, that looks great. Not only do you seem to be a champion of upskilling and upward mobility, but also cross training and encouraging folks to move from one skill area to another one. Can you share any more of these like maybe individual success stories of like maybe an entry level worker who advanced through training or started off in this career field and then moved over to this career field and then became a superstar over here?
Yeah, there's quite a few people within Smithbridge that have done exactly that. They've started in the quarry running the equipment, then become the a shift foreman, and then as they get a little bit older, and you know, down in the quarry, it's a hard operation. It's physical, it's demanding, it's hot, dusty. It's a hard job. As you get a bit older, you've got to have a path that you can move on. And guys have then moved into the quality department, where they're now taking samples and doing the testing, and that to the federal standards for base course and that sort of thing in our lab. So that's one path in the quarry. Other people in our mechanical division, they've been come in as helpers and labourers. They turn into welders. They then become a leading hand on a job. We have a leading hand ratio of 1 to 3 workers, and a leading hand has got to fill out the daily timesheets, and for his 3 men, he's got to fill out the safe work practices, the documents, and file all of those in the job cards, and he's got to lead the crew, and then that man then leads into being the foreman, and so on. So you know, right now in the apprenticeship scheme, I think we've got 5 welders going through, and we used to just train them, but not formalize that training externally. So 7 years ago, when my son came up and took over the mechanical division, and he's now operations manager for all the contracting division.
Okay.
Simon went through with Bert at the Trades Academy and did the training course for the welding program. And so on a Friday afternoon, those welding apprentices come down to the office and he goes through the modules, and they're working through the 4-year apprenticeship program there now. One of our success stories was our young girl. She was in the wrestling team, the Guam wrestling team, and she did the welding apprenticeship, and she didn't quite finish, which was a little bit of a shame, but only by 3 weeks. And she said, "Oh, I'm going to the States." But she can always come back and finish that. But 3 weeks, she would have got her indentures. She's now in the States. She's got a job over there welding, and that. So yeah, she's doing really well.
That's good. That's good that you all do this. So let's talk about Smithbridge and GCA Trades Academy. It seems like you all have a long and very close relationship. Can you talk a little bit about the role GCA Trades Academy has played in your training and development strategy at Smithbridge?
Yeah, obviously, we really appreciate the efforts that Bert's done, and I've been on the board since the inception of the Trades Academy with Bert, and seen it grow over the years, and seen the successes, and that. So it's only obvious that with the academy as the training organization, if you're going to train, it's got to be in association with GCA Trades Academy. And to that end, a few years ago, 3 or 4, maybe 5, there was a serious shortage of crane operators. We operated the crane division, but really it was just supplementary to our contracting division. So it was 4 or 5 cranes. Well, today it's 25 cranes here on Guam. And so to bring 25 cranes, we charter a ship and bring 2,000 tons of iron up 2 years ago. Well, that's all done in 2 weeks. But now you've got to get another 20 crane operators certified.
Yeah.
Well, you don't just pluck them out of the sky. So we recognized a few years ago that, one, the Trades Academy was growing and would continue to grow, and it became available for sale was the property next door.
Yes.
So Albert Smith bought the property next door. We've got a tenant in there, and the whole idea in the future is that property can be the expansion for Bert's campus when he's ready, and that. So in doing that, and then Albert being up here and lockdown for COVID for 2 years, he saw the benefits in the Trades Academy, and having the owner and the decision maker on the spot is a lot easier to get decisions made than putting papers together back to the board in Australia and that kind of thing. So having Albert here and saying, "Hey, here's an opportunity, let's do this, let's support the Trades Academy, let's get them doing the crane training, rah-de-rah-de-rah," he bought into that, and that moved ahead in leaps and bounds, and it's been a good earner for the Trades Academy. It's been a great training ground for all the companies, because everybody's bought more cranes. There's more crane booms in the sky when you drive around now than you've ever seen in Guam in at least 24 years since I've been here. Yeah. So, everybody's using that. So that part's a real success story. And that from me comes from, like I said before, just the culture of training. I spent 20 years on the boilermaking apprenticeship committee back in New Zealand from 1981 until 2003 when I came up here. And just prior to coming up here, I was 2 years on the, well, more than 2 on the committee, but the immediate past chairman of the New Zealand Heavy Engineering Research Association, which is here probably, there's no real equivalent, but it's the steel industries forum and voice to government for all of the steel manufacturing. Maybe there's a US Manufacturers Association or a US, you know, I know we have the structural steel committees and those kind of things, but I think, yeah, there's no real voice here on Guam, and perhaps not a need for it either. But anyway, that was I was immediate past chairman when I left to come up to Guam of that organisation.
Yeah, so I was going to say, Graeme, you're starting them really young. I saw one of your apprentices, young apprentices, come into the camera screen there. You're
Yeah,
serious about that training and workforce development.
yeah,
Start them
yes,
young.
yep, yeah,
Hey, let
and that's something too. And Bert's doing it and doing a good job, and that's the you know, the soda pop and power tools. It's such a diverse industry now, and with computers being so important and everything, it really brings into it that the girls can be part of it as well. And
yeah,
and it starts at secondary school level. You've got to get a secondary school person to actually understand. They perhaps have to have an uncle in the industry and they can go, hey, Uncle Jim, how did you start? Well, I started driving a truck and then I did this and then I did that and then I became the QA manager and now I'm doing this and now I'm doing that. And I'm going up. One of the things for a welder, welding's a young man's game, good eyesight. So as your eyesight fails in your mid-40s and that, you need to be looking at where am I going next? And yes, you can put corrective lenses and all those things. But something I said to Jay once was the natural progression for a welder is into non-destructive testing,
yeah,
NDT
that makes sense.
or,
NDI, NDT.
or NDE. And
Yeah,
so, you know, that's night school, it's short courses, and you go and get your either your radiographer's license or your UT license, or
yeah,
better still, your welder's AWS, and man, you are now a contractor. You've now got the ability to be a contractor up at that next level. $150 an hour, $170 an hour. The AWSs are charging here on Guam now because they know that if you've got to fly someone from the States, there's the number.
right, right, right.
And you
Yeah,
cannot
so
get them when you need them. You know, there's still a shortage. And that. So, you know, welders progressing into that.
so I really appreciate all of that background with you and the GCA Trades Academy. Obviously, Bert Johnston was my second guest on the podcast, and I've been up there and toured the facilities several different times, and very much a proponent. Can you talk a little bit about maybe another part of the ecosystem, GCC? Last week we had Dr. Okada on from GCC. Is there any work that you all have done with um, GCC as part of that training and workforce development ecosystem?
Absolutely, Robert. Very early in the early stages of Trades Academy, we decided we've got to get on and do it, and we can't wait for government assistance. We just got to get on and make it happen. And when we succeed, people will come to us. People want to associate with successful organizations. And one of the things that Bert realized, and he didn't have to do any hard talking to convince the rest of the board, but we had to collaborate with the GCC, and Mary very, very obligingly and understood, and we formed a memorandum of understanding with GCC, and Mary now, and has for many years, sits on our board so that we don't overlap and we don't compete.
Yes.
And you know, the island is too small for you know, I use the analogy of airlines. You know, maybe we think United's got a monopoly kind of thing, but if they don't have people in the seats, they won't be here. And so it's no use us competing and both trying to do the same thing half-heartedly. Right. And that's where that communication early on in the piece with GCC really was absolutely a benefit.
Yes, outstanding. So, what do you think Guam as a whole needs to do to accelerate skilled trades training, particularly with the growing construction demands there? And what role can the government of Guam play in facilitating some of these things?
Yeah, tough question, because you've got so much, you've got such a variance. You know, the Marsden Point analogy that I used earlier in the talk was very simple. It was one site, it was very specific workload, it was one contractor who had a need to get their contract done. So the government of New Zealand, the training organisations, the unions, everybody wanted it to be a win-win situation. But if you take Camp Blas, for instance, there's so many contractors up there. They're all from offshore. They've all got to get their job done in that period of performance. If you don't start in a training environment years ahead, you can't just snap your fingers and say, right, I want 50 trained workers. I think, you know, the only answer to that is the H2 scheme. That seems to work. But where I would be advising young people coming out of school now, if your path, if your family member and you can see there's a path there and you want to stay on Guam at this point, might change in the future, then get into the industry by just showing the right attitude, and then grow with the industry, because we're now supposedly 5 years from the end of the construction phase, 2030. Well, 5 years you can get through your apprenticeship, and then the construction's over. You want to be looking into the maintenance and operations fields of what's going to happen in this infrastructure that's being constructed,
right.
and is going to be running for the next 50 years. And so I think that's where the military comes in. They and the military contractors, not the military construction contractors, but the military supply and operations contractors,
Yes.
like Raytheon, for instance. They're doing something, and
Or my old company, DZSP 21.
yeah, they know that this piece of sophisticated equipment that they're installing here on Guam is going to require these skills coming up in 5 years' time, and that those companies perhaps should be targeted to take on interns during the construction phases of their projects, to have them as apprentices going forward on operations and understanding the technology and the systems.
Right.
You know, a prime example there, we've got the submarines coming, and there's a 3D company coming.
Yeah.
And that. So they're going to be looking for people to operate that sophisticated machinery, and that to be able to print titanium and other exotic metal pieces as spares, just in time spares, and that sort of thing. Understanding
Yes.
what that next 10 years after construction finishes is where I think the younger ones could be targeting, those school leavers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So can you talk about any um, technologies that Smithbridge is, maybe new technologies that Smithbridge is adopting, like I don't know, digital project management tools or automation or drones or anything like that you're incorporating into your construction operations?
Yeah, well, all of those that you used, we're using. You know, we've just upgraded project management programs, tendering programs, NetSuite for labor, collecting your labor and your timesheets to try and make that more efficient,
Yeah.
centralizing some of those functions to the head office. Some are working, and some are still in the planning stage. The you know, the centralized system, the company's in a 350 employees. We're not there with the Cortex and the Blacks, but we're not there with the small businesses either, and we're just in this twilight zone. So lots of things like in the dredging projects, where we added additional sensors and technology that transferred the dredging of the harbour, the depth, the amount with each dig
Yes.
transferred back to the house stations, so that the contracting officer can see the progress on the job by logging in from on the website. You know, all things that some ways people consider them nice to have, but after you've had them, they just
Yeah,
fall
you
into
you
places.
won't go backwards.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
just think, yeah, well, that was pretty good, or no, that one didn't work, or how did we ever do without this item?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and that
What
the
about
addition. Yep, go ahead.
what about what about sustainability and um, new materials and technologies to promote more like a green environment, um, sustainable materials and stuff like that? Are you all experimenting with any of that in your construction business?
A little bit, not to a big extent, you know. Obviously, a lot of the things, or certain things like tier 3 and tier 4 diesel engines on any new equipment coming in for the emissions and those sort of things, you know, they're the new standards for Guam, and you know, everybody's complying with those. Management of our water runoff and that, working with EPA environmental, is always an ongoing thing. We run what we call a SHEQ, which is SHEQ
Okay.
program. So that's safety, health, environmental, and quality. And those four items are set at the beginning of the year with our key performance indicators that our safety department monitors each week on how we're doing with that, you know, including things like maybe an environmental spill from a concrete truck, or you know, something like that, and how quickly we respond, how we're perceived by the public. We like to think we're a good community player, and that we support a lot of community activities with the mayors around the island, particularly up around Jigo, where we are, of course, and that. So and we're always open. One of those performance indicators is if we had any complaints from the public, and that, and those complaints are logged, acted on, identified, addressed, acted on, and responded to publicly. It becomes part of the group's files and data.
Yes. So what types of like new technologies or innovations would you like to see Smithbridge maybe incorporate? Maybe even things like incorporating smart infrastructure into like some of the projects. Do you see that on the more of that on the horizon?
Yeah. One thing we're just incorporating now is the GPSs and the technology into some of the trucks, and that, so that you're ensuring that everybody's abiding by the road rules, and that you get a log where the trucks are, what speed they're doing, all of that kind of thing. All those systems that more and more people are coming to Guam with them, and so they become available and reliable. So we're always open to looking and at anything and everything.
Well, I love that shameless plug, Graham, because that was my uh, company, the most services, along with my partner over at IoT Solutions. We were the ones who helped you all with that port evolution of the 7,200 metric tons of raw materials that you all had to offload at the port and take to 4 different warehouse locations. You know, we put those AI-enabled IoT devices on 12 of you guys' trucks. And through that, you were able to kind of track things, see what you needed to do in terms of dispatching and possible bottlenecks, as well as safety alerts and stuff that was going on. In fact, there was an actual crash of another civilian vehicle that got captured by the video footage of one of your trucks to show that your truck had nothing to do with or what was going on with that vehicle's crash. So we're hopeful that we'll get a chance to uh, show you some more capabilities and work with you to bring in like RFID technologies, to bring in more driver insights as well, and tie the drivers to the truck, as well as maybe expand the number of vehicles that this capability is on. So thank you for that shameless plug.
Well, Robert, you can see me on the screen. I can put my hand on my heart and absolutely say that I did not know that you were involved with that company.
Well, then this was very divinely organized then to do that, because that was a great transition and a great plug. We really appreciated the opportunity to work with you. Obviously, we were working with Clark Shaman and Brad Sims and Brad's folks to get that done. And I think it gives you a lot more insight into your operations. And
Yeah,
you know, it was amazing to us to see, some of the objective data coming off of that 2+ day evolution. Your trucks, those 12 trucks, put 4,000 miles on Guam's roads, going back and forth from the port and unloading at the warehouse location. Just a massive operation.
yes. Well, that in itself, um, you understand that, the Gulf pier down at Mobile is immobilized with the floating cranes from Mawa that
Yes.
destroyed it. The owner of that cement facility is being squeezed by Taiwan to increase the price of cement. The other cement supplier on island is squeezing their prices up. So, we are a solution motivated bunch of people that work at Smithbridge. And if somebody comes and says to us, we're the only cement supplier and we're putting the price up by $100 a ton, we go, wow, do we eat this, or do we just pass it on to the consumer, or do we investigate other options? And that shipment that we moved was 8,000 odd tons of cement in bulky bags. So that's the first time cement, I understand, has been brought in a quantity like that. That's that's basically those two silos full, been brought in. Well, what that does, that means now we don't need a specialized cement boat. We can hire any tramp bulk carrier that happens to be in the Western Pacific heading in this direction to call in, pick up bulk bags and drop them off. And that. So, and then we have control of our concrete product, and we have control of our pricing. And that's critical. People, some of our customers are saying, you've got to guarantee you can give me X number of cubic yards of concrete. Well, we couldn't guarantee it with the supply terms there. So you've just got
Yes.
to, you've got to understand this is a big world, and if you only live on Guam and you only focus on Guam, you could get led down a path that worldly, there's many other solutions. And
Well,
just to that, New Zealand hasn't brought cement into the country now for 15 years in anything other than bulky bags in bulk carriers. Now they've got a big advantage. They bring the cement in a bulk carrier from Japan, load it, and then go back to one port and fill that whole bulk carrier with logs and goes back to Japan full. So it's very economic freight all the way down to New Zealand.
Yes, yes. I thought it was really great that you all had that kind of innovative mindset to want to explore this. And like I said, from a personal standpoint, I was glad that you all were willing to trust that in the most services to kind of hook you up with a device and technology that'll allow you to get, you know, where the rubber meets the road kind of data so that you can do the analysis on this and really be able to dig deep into, you know, what it actually cost you to do this versus what you
Yeah.
were doing before.
Well, we need to know how much every teaspoon of cement costs us to be able to understand where we can position ourselves in that concrete market. And of course,
Absolutely.
that technology that you supported, an ideal, place for that going forward is in the crane fleet. All the cranes in Australia are fitted with that technology.
Yes, yes. Yeah, we're hoping to do that. That was part of our marketing strategy. We felt like we really needed to start first with those folks who had the large vehicle fleets, as well as those who have heavy equipment fleets, cranes, etc., because you want that level of insight into what that vehicle is doing so that you can use that real world data to then understanding cost as well as safety and other kinds of aspects of it. So we hope
Yeah.
to kind of grow and expand that product. You all were our first client. I think that you all are going to open up a lot of doors now that they see what you were able to get out of it from
Oh,
Smithbridge.
great. Pleased for you. Great.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. So, you once said that this was a great time uh, for young people to be apprentice, and that uh, you thought that if you had the opportunity right now, you know, that was definitely what you would be wanting to do. Can you talk to me about what you think about that? And is it really a great time for young people to go into the trades? Is this a good option for today, 2025?
Oh, I think so. And historically, the trades um, have been plumbing, electrical, carpentry. So in other parts of the world, anyone that does any one of those trades becomes a very likely candidate to finish their apprenticeship and rather go and work for somebody else, get their pickup truck, put their canopy on it, put their tools in it, and start marketing themselves and
Mm,
start their own business and give it a go. And a huge number of businesses, certainly in New Zealand and Australia, started from just like that. Apprentices doing their apprenticeship, going into those trades. Air conditioning is another good one here.
mm,
And that. But having said that, eventually that market is going to get saturated and there's going to be too many, and then nobody makes a reasonable living in that. So you just got to be careful about that. In the machinist, fitter, turner, boilermaker, welder, fabricator, not so much welder. Welders can get their truck and go and be contract welders, pipeliners, those sorts of things. But the other trades, you need a big workshop, you need capital behind you to get your business going. They're not so easy to get into. But those other trades, that plumber, the builder, the carpenter, he can build his own house. He's working on projects with the plumber, and he goes to the plumber during the week. Hey, I'm building my house. You come and do the plumbing for me, and I'll do some carpentry for you on yours. That's what used to happen. After rugby on a Saturday morning, the rugby team used to come around and they would hand mix concrete and pour 2 slabs of the driveway of the captain's house. And then once the 6 slabs of concrete, after he shouted all the beers at the end of the day, were poured, everybody in the team would be pouring the hooker's driveway and that. So, you know, it's a team approach. Nothing really. It's very hard if you're on your own, if you haven't got family support, if you haven't got support of a team, if you're not part of a group that can just give you that boost. It's networking. To me, the success of life is based on your family to start, your neighborhood next, you know, and in Guam's case, Guam next. There's nothing after your family, your neighborhood, Guam. And you can be involved in all 3 of those. And if you actively and successfully are involved, there's lots and lots of good people here on Guam to lend a hand and
Yeah. So I tell you, this was a great conversation, just like I knew it would be. You're full of just awesome insights. Before we wrap it up here, is there anything that you'd like to share with the audience about, um, you know, closing thoughts for workforce development or Smithbridge and what Smithbridge brings to the island community?
yeah, I think with the workforce development side of it, you've got to be looking at your employees. I hit on a thought before. In 2003, we were 40 employees. In 2014, we were about 120 employees, and we had slowly grown to that. And then about 2019, through acquisitions of the Perez Concrete and a couple of others, we all of a sudden jumped up to this 300 to 350 employees. And at that point, we welcomed in the Perez family in the concrete, and as employees come in long term. And at one stage there, and just memory, Robert, but at one stage, about 2018 or 2019, we were very concerned that our average age of employees was getting up into the 50s. We're now, and I could confirm it for you, but now we're down around about 35.
That's a success story.
Yeah, and we've got, well, I'm 23 years here, and there's people in Smithbridge longer than me. We've got people, a lot of people that are just knocking over the 25, 26. The company's been going 32. When I came up, we didn't even feature in that Deloitte book. And this year I think we were 12th or 13th last year and 12th this year.
Mm-hmm.
And that. So it's all been built on the sweat of local people. And we just don't forget that.
That's outstanding. That's outstanding. Well, thank you for those closing thoughts. And it's really great to know that it's not just about importing the brain power and the skills that we need, that, you know, there's a commitment to build up the workforce that we need right here on the island. And I appreciate what you and what Smithbridge have done, and the commitment you've made to building up the workforce here in Guam. So thank you so much for being my guest today on the Innovate Guam podcast. For my audience, I hope you learned something today. I certainly did. Please watch for my podcast dropping weekly at the beginning of the week. Follow me on all social media platforms. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and engage with all of my content. I'm really trying to get my content out in front of more people, because I think it really could have an impact to have these kind of conversations about what we can do to move our community forward. So please engage with my content. Also, don't forget about my Innovate column, the first and third Fridays of each month at guampdn.com. And I look forward to seeing you next time. And remember, no matter whether you're at work, at home, or at play, always innovate. Thank you.